Welcome to IAS Project. We are continuing with the videos on Indian economy for UPSC Civil Services exam. Now let's go forward and try to understand what gross national income is. Gross national income is nothing but the aggregate value of gross balances of primary incomes of all residential institutional units. So let's try to understand the keywords first. There is a keyword called primary incomes. There is a keyword called resident. There is a keyword called institutional units. We have already talked about institutional units in our SNA video. If you have not seen that video, please go and watch that video first. The link for this video is given in the description. Institutional units are those units which perform certain economic function. That is, they produce or they consume. Whatever they are doing, they earn primary incomes. Okay. So GNI is nothing but the aggregate value of gross balances. Again, gross balances is also a keyword. Gross balances of primary incomes earned by resident institutional units. Now, what is resident? We have already seen definition of resident in our previous video. Resident is nothing but it has a center of significant economic interest in an economy. So any resident, it may be foreign or domestic, but it has significant economic interest in an economy, it is called as a resident. So what are primary incomes? Primary incomes are those incomes that are accrued to institutional units. So institutional units basically earn primary incomes. Why do they earn such primary incomes? Because of their involvement in processes of production and ownership of assets that may be needed for purposes of production. So basically, primary incomes are of two types. So institutional units may get incomes in the form of compensation for employees. They may also hold assets like financial assets. For financial assets means simply loans and all those. They may get interest on this. They may hold physical assets. For example, land. They may get rent on this. So all these are basically called as primary incomes of institutional units. Primary incomes mainly include factor incomes, that is CE plus OSMI plus CFC. Also, receipts like taxes on production and imports, of course, minus subsidies of the government. However, it does not include social contribution payments. For example, pensions will not be considered under primary incomes. Also, current taxes on wealth and income are also not there. Current transfers are also not considered under primary incomes. We will see the definitions of all these in our coming videos. If we talk more about gross national income, a part of primary incomes generated in an economy may go to non-residential units, that is, residential units which are outside the economy. Let's consider this with example. Let's consider this is USA. Let's consider this as India. Some Indian individuals may go to USA to work, let's say software engineers. Also, some companies from India may go to USA and establish companies there. Similarly, individuals and companies from USA may come and work in India. When they come and work in India, they earn certain income from India. Ultimately, they are going to send that income to USA because they are residents of USA. Similarly, Indians like software engineers who are going to work in USA are going to send income back to India. And this income generally comes in the form of remittances. Similarly, companies can also send incomes. So, we can understand that certain people in India are actually sending incomes to other countries. Maybe USA, maybe Sri Lanka, maybe Nepal, any other countries. Similarly, certain individuals in other countries, Nepal, Sri Lanka, USA and other countries are sending incomes back to India. So, gross national income is nothing but aggregate value of those gross balances. So, you are going to remove the incomes which are being sent from India to outside, and you are going to add incomes which are coming from outside into India. A part of primary incomes generated in an economy, for example, like India, may go to non-residential units, like they are going to USA, they are going to Nepal, Sri Lanka, etc. Similarly, income from USA, Nepal, Sri Lanka and all these countries is also coming to India because residential units of India are present in other countries. So we can compare GNI with GDP. GNI is nothing but GDP plus net primary income from the rest of the world. Net primary income from rest of the world is nothing but primary incomes receivable from non-resident units. So whatever the units that are there in USA, Sri Lanka, Nepal and other countries and are sending money to India, minus primary incomes payable to non-resident units. Whatever the units that are present in India that are sending money back to other countries. So you have to remove that income and you have to add the income that is coming into India. So if you add these both to GDP, you will get gross national income. So depending on this one, this term, which is nothing but net primary income from rest of the world, if this net primary income is positive, then we will know that a positive value is being added to GDP. So GNI will be greater than GDP. However, if net primary income is negative, which means primary incomes receivable from non-resident units is less than primary incomes payable to non-resident units, that is, the negative value is higher than the positive value, then this whole value will be negative, which means GDP and then added a negative value, which means GNI will be lower than GDP. Depending on primary incomes that are receivable and payable, GNI can be greater than, equal to or less than GDP. What is the case of India? It is less than GDP. So let's see the comparison between GDP and GNI. This is very simple. GDP is shown here in green. So if you add GDP to these two quantities, you will get GNI. What are the two quantities? That is nothing but you add compensation to employees, you add net taxes on production and imports. Net taxes means taxes minus subsidies. You also add property income. Property may be physical property like buildings for which you get rent. Property may be financial property like you give out loans and you will get interest. So whatever is the value that is receivable from the world, from the rest of the world, you add this, and whatever is payable to the rest of the world, you subtract this from GDP. You will get GNI. So you add GDP and this value and remove this value, you get GNI. Let's continue with the comparison of GDP and GNI. Both are based on residential unit concept and residential institutional unit concept. This residential institutional unit concept is given in SNA 2008. GDP, however, measures production because GDP is a production measure. We measure GDP in production method. GNI measures income. So this is an income method of national income measurement. The words domestic and national are equivalent. So here we may use GDP domestic, GNI national. Does not matter. What is important is this is product, which means it is a production method. This is income, which means it is an income method. Gross is same in both, so gross is same in both. So the words domestic and national are equivalent in terms of their meaning. So what is GNP then? GNP stands for gross national product. If you see most of the old books or textbooks for Indian economy, you won't find GNI much, but you will find GNP. Basically, countries are stopping to use the word GNP and they are moving on to the concept of GNI. But however, there is a very close relation between these two. So let's understand this one also just for the purpose of knowledge. System of national accounts uses the term GNI instead of GNP. It does not use GNP, but it uses GNI, which is gross national income. GNP is gross national product. GNP is nothing but total value of all finished goods and services produced by the country's citizens. So the country's citizens can be within India or outside India, and produced by country's citizens in a financial year irrespective of their location. That is, they can be present within India or outside India. Whatever they are producing, the value of those goods will be counted towards GNP. Similarly, if there are foreigners present in India or foreign companies present in India, whatever they are producing, they will be counted towards those foreign countries for which they are citizens of. So GNP considers the output generated by country's citizens and businesses located domestically as well as abroad. So if we consider this definition, we can compare GNP with GDP. GNP is nothing but GDP plus NFIA. NFIA stands for net factor income for abroad. Whatever are the factors are there, whatever the income they are producing, that income has to be balanced. Let's again understand this with example of USA and India. Let's suppose this is India and this is USA. Whatever are the factors of production which are sending incomes from USA to India, this has to be added. And whatever are the factors of production which are sending incomes from India to USA, this has to be subtracted from GDP. Then we will get GNP. So net factor income from abroad is nothing but this minus this. NFIA is the difference between aggregate amount that a country's citizens and companies earn abroad and the aggregate amount that foreign citizens and overseas companies earn in that country. So difference between 1 and 2 is nothing but NFIA. So NFIA basically measures difference between income inflows and income outflows. That is 1 and 2 as we have seen in the previous video. So this is basically our income inflow which is coming from outside, not only just from USA but from all other countries. From all other countries. And this 2 is outflow, that is not only to USA but for all other countries. So if we adjust 1 minus 2, then we will get NFIA. So whatever are these inflows and outflows, they can include private remittances which are sent by both individuals as well as companies, interest on external loans. For example, if India takes a loan from USA, whatever is the interest India is paying back to USA, that should be counted as an outflow. Similarly, external grants. For example, if India is providing a grant to Sri Lanka, for example, then that grant has to be removed. However, it must be remembered that NFIA does not include FDI, FPI or other investments, as well as loan principal amount and currency swaps, because they are not incomes. They have to be given back at a particular time in the future. Or FDI and FPI, they directly come into the market and they form ownership. So these are not considered within the NFIA. NFIA is positive if country receives more inflows than outflows. So 1 minus 2, if 1 is greater than 2, then NFIA will be positive. In case of India, it is negative because inflows are very low compared to outflows. Therefore, India's GDP is greater than GNP. So GNP is nothing but GDP plus NFIA. So in case of NFIA, this is a negative value. It means that we are removing something from GDP. So GNP is less than GDP or GDP is greater than GNP in case of India. So what are the uses of GNI and GNP? GNI and GNP consider both internal as well as external strengths and weaknesses of economy. So GDP was a territorial concept. Whatever is happening within India, that is being counted, whether it is being produced by domestic or foreign people or foreign companies, it is being counted towards GDP. But in case of GNP, we are also accounting whatever is coming into India and whatever is going out of India. So it considers both domestic strength as well as external strength as well as weaknesses. GNI and GNP give better picture of country's economy than GDP because of globalized economic world. Because today most of the goods are produced outside, as well as because of the rise of multinational companies, that is MNCs, production is very much distributed over global supply chains. So GNP or GNI gives a better picture compared to GDP in a globalized world or globalized economy. GNI or GNP can also be used to study certain aspects like remittances, grants and interest payments, as we have seen, because all these three form part of NFIA. So GNP has NFIA and GNI has rest of the world concept. So both these can be used to study remittances, grants, interest payments on loans, etc. and their contribution to national income. So what are the limitations of GNI and GNP? Let's see here. GNI and GNP cannot be correlated with development aspects like equality, happiness, etc. Moreover, GNI and GNP do not correlate with job creation or tax collection, unlike GDP. GDP, for example, if GDP of India is considered, then we are only considering whatever is happening in India. If GDP of India grows, generally economy also grows because more jobs are being provided and more income is being generated and more goods and services are being consumed. Then GDP increases. As GDP increases, we have seen from tax buoyancy concept Generally, with increase in GDP, there is also increase in tax collection. However, GNI and GNP cannot be related to job creation and tax collection. Why? Because GNP and GNI also have external dimension. For example, whatever is happening outside India by units which are related to India is also being counted in GNI or GNP. For example, Indian companies which are present in USA, if they are creating jobs there, if they are producing goods and services there, but are sending profits back to India, it means that jobs are not being created in India, although GNP is increasing. For example, companies like Infosys are working in USA and giving jobs there, giving income there, and giving goods and services there, but are sending profits back to India. So jobs are not being created in India. However, GNP of India is increasing. So this is a very big limitation of GNI and GNP. GNI and GNP have an absence of specific territorial character. We know that GDP has a specific territorial character. For example, GDP consider only those economic activities which are happening within the physical boundary of the India or within the economic territory of India. But GNP and GNI are not like that. GNI and GNP also factor external strengths of India, that is, what are the incomes being sent from other countries. Because of such absence of territorial character, government policy making cannot be very easy. Large difference in GNP and GDP also means that currency exchange rates may fall or increase. Why? Because when GDP or GNP difference is very high, it means that forex reserves are going to be affected. For example, if we are getting so much remittances into India, what happens? Our forex is going to increase. If forex is going to increase, then our currency is also going to appreciate. If currency is going to appreciate, then our exports will not be competitive and our exports may fall. So all this may happen if the difference between GNP and GDP is very large. Now let's see what net national product is. Generally, whenever there is the word net before national product or national income or domestic product or domestic income or whatever the case, it means just simply subtract a depreciation. So NNP is nothing but GNP minus depreciation. We already know depreciation is consumption of fixed capital. So NNP is nothing but GNP minus consumption of fixed capital. NNP is popularly called as national income. All are national incomes: GDP, GNI, NNP, NNI, all these are national incomes. But NNP particularly is called as national income. So when someone says just national income, they are referring to NNP. NNP, when divided by population of the country, gives per capita income. So if someone says just per capita income, it means NNP divided by population. Otherwise, people may say GDP per capita income, GNI per capita income, NNP per capita income, or NNI per capita income. But just per capita income means NNP per capita income. So what is NNP? NNP is nothing but depreciation adjusted GNP. Similarly, NNI is nothing but depreciation adjusted GNI. So NNI is nothing but GNI minus depreciation of assets, and NNP is nothing but GNP minus depreciation of assets. NNI or NNP is also called as national income of economy, as we have seen in the previous slide. It is considered as the purest form of income of a nation because it removes depreciation and it also considers whatever is happening not only in India but external strengths of India are also considered. So it is therefore called as purest income of nation. So let's revise quickly the national income formulae. The first one is GNI. GNI can be written like this: GDP plus net factor income from the rest of the world. Then GNP. GNP is nothing but GDP plus net factor income from abroad. NNI is nothing but GNI minus depreciation. We have N, means we are subtracting depreciation from G. We have NDP. NDP is nothing but GDP minus depreciation. We have N, so we are subtracting depreciation from G. Again, we have NNP, which is GNP minus depreciation. Let's follow up in the next video. Please like and share this video. Also, subscribe to IAS Project. Thank you.